The sense of disbelief and relief is palpable as one speaker voices their surprise at the return of another. There's an overwhelming sense of gratitude in the air, with words like, "Thank you," and "We're back," echoing through the conversation. The speaker seems to be acknowledging not just a physical return, but the reappearance of someone who had been absent for a significant period of time. The repetition of phrases like, "We back," conveys the magnitude of the moment, as if to emphasize the importance of the return, not just to the speaker, but to the whole group. The phrase "back in the saddle" could suggest a return to a familiar situation or role, a place of comfort, or even a sense of being ready to take on challenges again. The other speaker, who has seemingly been concerned or troubled during the absence, expresses relief and a touch of confusion about the odd behavior of the returning person. They recall the strange actions of the other individual over the past 5 months. The behavior had shifted dramatically, something not typical of the person they knew. The change in appearance, such as a different hairstyle, might be symbolic of a deeper transformation, and the shift in attitude was far more unsettling. The speaker notes how the individual became aggressive and unpleasant toward others, even resorting to physical violence. The mention of a specific incident, where the person made a child cry in Brussels, further highlights the severity of the transformation. In addition to the personal changes, there was a disturbing comment about wanting to ruin wrestling, which appears to be a point of great concern for the speaker. This drastic alteration in character and attitude raises the question of whether the person genuinely thought their actions would have a positive impact, or if they were simply lost in some kind of emotional turmoil. The first speaker's response is brief, possibly acknowledging the changes, but not directly addressing the specifics of their actions. It's almost as if the speaker is trying to downplay the negative behavior or explain it away with an unfinished thought. They don't seem ready to fully discuss the past 5 months in detail, but there's an underlying sense that they understand the concerns of the other person. The second speaker, however, clearly feels that the situation had gone too far. They are still processing the events and are perhaps trying to make sense of what went wrong or why things unfolded in the way they did. The overarching tone of the conversation is one of reconciliation, as if both speakers are cautiously testing the waters, unsure of how to move forward after such a tumultuous period. Despite the heavy concerns and unusual behavior from the past, there is a sense of closure and renewal when the first speaker expresses their relief at being back. The mention of "good to have you back" carries a tone of finality and acceptance, a reassurance that no matter the turbulent period, there's room for understanding and forgiveness. The reconciliation, while not fully explored in this brief exchange, hints at the complexity of human relationships, how people can drift, change, and yet ultimately return to a place of familiarity, comfort, and understanding. In essence, this conversation speaks to the journey of personal transformation, the consequences of those transformations, and the ability to reconnect and rebuild after a period of estrangement. It explores the tension between the desire for change and the responsibility that comes with those changes, as well as the inevitable reconnection that happens when people decide to work through misunderstandings and difficulties. Sure. Here's the continuation of the paraphrase, expanding further on the themes and dynamics presented in the original dialogue. As the conversation unfolds, it becomes clear that the relationship between these two individuals is more complex than it first appears. The return of the first speaker, though celebrated, is not without its challenges. The second speaker's tone suggests a mix of relief, but also lingering concern. There is an underlying tension, a feeling that the return is not as simple as it seems. It's as if the first speaker's return brings with it a sense of uncertainty, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them. The mention of the dramatic changes that took place during the 5-month absence points to a deeper shift within the person who had left. It's not just that they looked different or acted differently, it's that their behavior became erratic, even dangerous. The second speaker's reference to the violence, such as the physical altercations and the incident with the child in Brussels, paints a picture of someone who is not only alienating themselves from others, but actively sabotaging their relationships and possibly their own happiness. In a way, these actions seem like a cry for help, though the first speaker may not have recognized it as such at the time. Or perhaps they felt justified in their actions, thinking that their anger and aggression would bring about some sort of resolution or catharsis. The fact that the speaker had even voiced the desire to ruin wrestling, something that was presumably central to their identity, suggests a deeper inner turmoil, an attempt to destroy what had once been a source of meaning or passion in their life. It's as if they were attempting to tear down everything they had once held dear, possibly in an effort to rebuild from the ground up, even if the foundation was built on a sense of destruction and anger. Yet, there's a subtle hint that these actions were not entirely self-destructive. There's an element of confusion, a sense that the first speaker might have been caught in a storm of their own emotions and didn't fully understand the impact of their behavior. The brief exchange, where the first speaker acknowledges the return without fully addressing what happened during the absence, hints at a reluctance to delve into the past. It's as though they are trying to move forward, to put the chaos behind them, and perhaps they fear that revisiting those difficult months would reopen wounds that have not yet healed. They may also be afraid of the judgment that would come with admitting to the full extent of their actions. After all, the speaker has just returned from a period of absence, and there's a natural desire to reestablish connections, to avoid confronting painful truths, and to simply find peace. On the other hand, the second speaker is clearly grappling with the fallout of these actions. Their recollections of the past 5 months suggest that they are still processing what happened, trying to come to terms with the person the first speaker became during their absence. Their questioning tone implies a struggle to understand what motivated these drastic changes. The mention of the kid in Brussels, for instance, suggests that the second speaker is not only concerned about the behavior itself, but about the lasting emotional impact it may have had on others. The child's tears are symbolic of a loss of innocence or a breach of trust that may not easily be repaired. The second speaker's reference to wrestling further adds to the gravity of the situation. Wrestling, likely a central part of the first speaker's identity, seems to have been a point of focus during this time of upheaval. The desire to ruin something that once brought joy and meaning suggests a profound existential crisis, a sense of disconnect from the self or the world around them. But what's striking here is the change in tone as the